If you had to leave the US tomorrow, would you be ready? No, really. If something happened, if your financial situation changed overnight, if new laws made it harder to live the way you do now, would you know what to do? Looking back to the time before I moved abroad, if I knew then what I knew now, this is exactly what I'd do. I've been living outside the US for more than a dozen years, and nearly a decade of that has been in Latin America. I've moved countries multiple times, and I've seen so many people struggle because they weren't prepared. I remember when I left the US to live abroad back in 2012, and I thought I had everything figured out. I had a plan, but reality hit fast. There were things I didn't really know about. Visas, banking. I made mistakes, but I also learned. And that's why I'm making this video. So you don't have to learn the hard way like I did. This isn't about fear, it's about being ready. So let's get into it. Step 1. Decide what kind of move this is. Before you do anything, figure out if this is a short-term escape or a long-term move. That doesn't mean you have to decide your entire future now. However, at some point, you are going to need to think about if you are just testing the waters or planning to settle somewhere. Now, I know more than most that people throw around the terms expat and immigrant haphazardly without even thinking about what they mean, but they actually have meanings. I previously called my channel Generic Expats, and I loved that name. However, I had such a lot of confusion from the audience and from people not understanding the two terms that I had to change my channel name. You see, what really matters is how the country you are moving to sees you. The perspective from your home country when you leave is that you are an expat. However, the country that is receiving you will see you as an immigrant as soon as you apply for residency and to stay long-term or permanently. Some countries make it really easy for you to stay long-term, and some countries do not. For example, I know that Europe in the Schengen zone has a 90-day in, 90-day out rule, whereas many parts of Latin America do not actually have this type of rule. The sooner you know your goals, the easier the process will be. Step 2. Check your visa options. Every country in Latin America has different visa rules and they change. Some countries like Costa Rica, Panama, Mexico offer tourists a long stay, no questions asked, of 180 days. Others like Ecuador, Colombia, and the CA4 in Central America give you 90 days upon arrival and the option to extend another 90 days. For some, border hopping between neighboring countries on the tourist visa is totally a fine situation and they're okay with it. But for others, they're not quite so comfortable about this and they don't think this is a great long-term plan. Some places, for example, Costa Rica at the moment is thinking about cracking down on these perpetual tourists. So if you're thinking about staying somewhere indefinitely, start looking at residency options early and understand what the situation is like in the country you want to move to. Step 3. Figure out how you get there. Flights are the easiest way to relocate, but if you're in the southwest part of the United States, driving to Mexico or Central America is a real option. It's a totally different experience from flying, and due to the recent news about recent crashes that have happened in the United States, this could influence what you decide to do. For some, this might make the transition much easier. I've crossed land borders from the United States all the way down to Colombia, and I'll be honest, it's not always smooth. The first time I did an overland border crossing back in 2017 on my Suzuki Intruder, I thought I had everything in order. But I got hit with unexpected paperwork and some pretty long lines. The key is knowing what to expect and having backups for transportation and accommodation options. If you're considering this option, make sure to research into the specific border crossing that you'll take. Step 4. Sort out banking before you leave. A big mistake many people make is assuming their US bank card will work everywhere. Yes, Latin America is more connected than ever. But many banks block international transactions if you don't let them know in advance. You don't want to land in a new country and realize your card doesn't work. I learned this the hard way. When I arrived in Peru in 2009, my card was blocked and I couldn't take out any money to even eat. I had to spend hours on the phone trying to get it sorted, but luckily I was with a friend that had a card that worked. Now, I'll always have multiple ways to access money, whether it be through PayPal, multiple bank cards in the United States, or the USD I carry at every international border because that is the international currency. If you're moving long term, it might be worth checking if you can open a local bank account. Some countries make it easy, while others require for you to have residency. I tried opening a bank account on a tourist visa in Colombia and couldn't at all. In any case, don't rely on just one source of funds. Having your US bank account and accessing those funds through an ATM card is generally enough for short to even long-term living. Step 5. Find a place to stay, but keep it flexible. I always recommend booking a short-term rental first. Even if you think you know where you want to live, you might change your mind once you arrive. Get an Airbnb per day, week, or month and explore the different neighborhoods before you sign a long-term lease. A few years ago, I moved to Costa Rica thinking that this would be the place for me. Everyone had said so many great things about it, and I arrived to San Jose super excited. Once I got there, I realized it wasn't for me. Luckily, I had only booked a 6-week stay, so I was able to pack up and take off right after. Flexibility is key when relocating. Step 6. Understand healthcare and insurance. One of the biggest surprises for Americans moving to Latin America is how inexpensive healthcare is. In many countries, even tourists can access the public healthcare system. I've personally done it in Saigon in Vietnam and in Nicaragua. In Saigon, I walked into the public clinic and I got all of my healthcare done for less than $10, whereas in Nicaragua, I got everything done for free. Private healthcare is also incredibly affordable compared to the United States. In places like Mexico, Colombia, and Ecuador, you can see a doctor for less than $50 and a specialist for $100 or less. If you need ongoing care or you are a little bit older in age, perhaps getting the private insurance is a cheap and good option, but for many people, for example myself, paying out of pocket works just fine. Step 7. Understand your finances in this new country. Unless you retire with a pension or Social Security, you have worked many years and built up a huge savings and you're living off of that, you're going to need a way to earn some money. Working a local job just isn't an option. Most countries don't allow it on a tourist visa, and even if they did, the wages are so low you wouldn't even want them. The good news is that remote work is easier than ever if you're looking to work. You don't have to have a YouTube channel to make money, even though I basically make nothing anyways. You can teach languages online, like me. For example, I teach ESL to Asians online, and I teach basic Spanish and Portuguese to future expats. You can even start an e-commerce business or even work remotely for an American company. For retirees with a fixed income or remote workers and digital nomads like myself, low-cost countries in Latin America can really increase your quality of life. Here's a rough idea of what a comfortable lifestyle costs for a single person in the following countries. In Mexico, it's $1,500 to $2,000. In Colombia, it's $1,000 to $1,500. In Ecuador, it's about $1,000 to $1,500 as well. In Panama, it's about $1,500 to $2,000. And in Costa Rica, it's about $1,500 to $2,500 per person. These numbers definitely depend on where you live. Big, popular cities definitely cost a lot more, where smaller, less known cities, for example, where I am now, Pereira, costs a lot less. Moving abroad isn't as simple as buying a plane ticket, but it isn't as complicated as most people think. The key to a good transition is preparation. I've seen so many people arrive to new countries that are unprepared, that are struggling with visas, banking, and money, and it's not fun. But if you take these steps more seriously, you can make the transition quite a bit smoother. And once you do, you might find that life outside the US is better than you had even imagined. If this was helpful and you're thinking about moving abroad, let me know in the comments. And if you want more videos similar to this one, make sure to subscribe. Hasta la próxima.